I'm here, my boy Jeremy. We're here to present you our MLB On Deck segment for Wednesday, May 15th. If you're new to this channel, please make sure and click the subscribe button below so you can watch all of our MLB, NBA, and NFL videos. And if you haven't came and checked out our website here at dfscheatsheet.com, you're absolutely missing out. We have all the tools to help you compete with the pros day in and day out, including a complete optimizer, tons of content, daily FanDuel, and DraftKings cash lineups. Hey, we're truly a one-stop shop for all your DFS needs. So make sure to come check out the site here at dfscheatsheet.com. So, hey, what up, Jay? How you doing out there, bro?
Yo, what's up, man? I'm doing good.
Hey, another day. Another pretty good night of MLB last night. Hey, we got a little bit smaller slate today, 8 games. I'm ready to kind of jump in and just talk about it.
Yeah, hey, look, I'm telling you right now that if you're not taking advantage of the free trial to at least get on board with some of the content we produce, yesterday we pretty much called every team that went off, and we pretty much were on the right side of every single matchup. So it's just one of those things from a statistical analysis standpoint. Baseball can be pretty predictive, or at least put you in a really good spot with the teams you're going to target. So, I'm not sure how many guys thought Trent Thornton or Mike Leake were good pitchers yesterday, but we definitely talked about them and covered them. I mean, those guys were top performing pitchers, so I just stacked stuff up. What's that?
I had a bunch of Thornton yesterday.
Yeah.
But, so, I mean, hey, like Jeremy said, hey, check it out, 14-day free trial. You got nothing to lose, man. Hey, we've been on absolute fire for MLB. You might as well stop wasting your money, join the money team, and get on the right track of things. So, as always, this video is more of an overview, get you a general idea of some teams that we're looking at. We don't really go too crazy in depth, but we got about 4 or 5 different other MLB pieces day in and day out that you can access. You can check out, with our free trial, etc. So hey, check it out, and let's go, man. I'm ready to talk some baseball. We'll start with with hitters as always. This is an easy call, so I'm not even going to go too crazy in depth. This is a third straight day in a row. You get Houston going against a not a very good pitcher. They get a lefty. We love Houston against lefties. This guy, Gregory Soto, he was a double-A pitcher. He got called up because, we've been talking about it with Detroit. They're just so short-staffed on pitching right now. Bullpen is continuing to get taxed. Probably going to be another bullpen game. I don't think this guy, Gregory Soto, is going to go too deep. Love the Houston righties in this matchup. They have a 225 team ISO. This guy, Gregory Soto, is giving up a 35% hard contact rate. For me, I'm looking at the George Springers, Bregman, Correa, Gurriel, Tyler White. All these guys are definitely in play. Chirinos, he hit lefties very well for his career. And then if Reddick is in the Reddick, he's a lefty. It's a lefty-lefty matchup. But I really like Reddick against lefties as well. He's a guy who hits lefties good. So Houston, by far, they have the highest implied total on the slate at over 6 runs. And it's just short, simple, and easy. Houston is a team that you definitely want to have in some of your stacks today. Probably the highest exposed team that you should have. Moving on, next team we're going to go with is going to be the Texas Rangers going against Jorge Lopez. This is a spot I love the Texas lefties. Jorge Lopez, he gives up a 347 ISO to lefties, only a 194 ISO to righties. So you can see the big discrepancy in the numbers, lefties versus righties against them. Texas is a team. They have a 203 team ISO. Lopez gives up a 42% hard contact rate. So, I'm looking at all the lefties in the Rangers lineups, man. You're looking at Chu, Mazzara, Gallo. You can look at Mazubo Cabrera as a switch hitter, Odor. All these guys are definitely in play. You could consider a couple of the righties to kind of fill out your stacks, but in reality, I think there's enough lefties in this lineup that you just target the Texas lefties and feel very, very comfortable with that stack that you kind of go with. Next team, this team we're probably going to spend a little bit more time on. This is something that me and you were kind of going back and forth on a little bit. We'll talk about Boston. I'm gonna throw the numbers out there real quick, and then we can kind of get into it a little bit more. Boston, they have the third highest implied total on the slate. What me and Jeremy were talking about, we feel Boston is not. This is not the best matchup for Boston. So for them to have the third highest implied total, it's a little bit tough. They get a matchup with German Marquez. He gives up a 143 WOBA with the lefties, 104 WOBA with the righties. And the Boston, they have a really low team ISO of only 165. And German Lopez, he only gives up 33% hard contact. So, yeah, man, I mean, Boston, Vegas has them as a third highest implied total. Saying they're going to put up some runs. Boston, I mean, they have a very, very good lineup. I mean, they could go out for 10 runs any day. I mean, that's just the potent lineup that they have, but they haven't really been showing it. So I think that they're in play, but I don't know how much I'm personally on Boston, and I don't think you're on Boston very much either, right?
I don't know yet. I don't. I just because. So let me just clear that up really quick. Like I don't agree with just right now based off my kind of introductory research I've done in the last few hours. I don't necessarily agree with where they're at from an implied run total standpoint because German Marquez is giving up sub 150 ISOs to both sides of the plate. So there's not a lot of slugging or power numbers. They're not really good against him. There's going to be a pretty right-handed dominant lineup for Boston. You'll see, Betts, Bogarts, Martinez. The pretty much the heart of that Chavis is all going to be from the right-handed side of the plate. The lefties they could possibly sit up there: Mitch Moreland, Benedetti, Sandy Leon is a switch hitter, and Jackie Bradley. I'm not scared of Jackie Bradley. I think German Marquez is probably a really good spot to be contrarian. We just have to see if the upside is there with his price tag at 8.7 on FanDuel and 9,000 on DraftKings. But I'm not saying that I'm not going to use Boston today. I haven't got that far yet. I don't think that I agree with them being the third highest implied run total on the board going against I think a lot of that has to do with reputation. That it's Boston.
Right.
Yesterday, I didn't agree with it either. I mean, I think we talked about that early on yesterday's video with Kyle Freeland, right? Being that Kyle Freeland had such crazy splits home and road, and Boston was a team that had a high implied run total yesterday. It just, look, some things you really have to take into consideration, and a lot of this research is how much do you want to weight a certain research category. And I put a lot of weight into weather. And when it's cold outside, the bump goes to pitching, right? The bump goes to pitching, period, when it's cold outside. So there's some factors that I just don't think I agree with Boston being the third highest implied run total on the board.
Yeah, I didn't, and I definitely like Boston. I think I'm definitely going to have some exposure today. I just don't know how much I'm really going to be targeting them, especially in my cash games, being the kind of cash games guy. Moving on, next team that we're going to talk about is going to be Atlanta at home. We've been talking about the new Atlanta Stadium for the past 2 years now. They say it's kind of like the Coors Field of the East. The balls fly. Atlanta, they get a matchup today at home against Michael Wacha, who gives up a 213 WOBA to lefties. 213 ISO to lefties, 229 ISO to righties. And a 41% hard contact rate. And on the flip side of things, Atlanta as a team, they have a 174 team ISO. So they're not necessarily crushing the ball, but it's not horrible. And then they get a bump at home in their stadium. I like both sides of this. I think Wacha is a guy that would you say that he's a little bit more of a reverse splits kind of guy?
I just want to say one more thing on Boston, man. Like, the more I think about it, you look at the runs they put up over the weekend against Seattle, and look at the pitching that they faced. Okay, they faced Felix Hernandez, who we know is over the hill. They faced Eric Swanson, who's given up ass to everybody's face.
Right.
Him being just primed for regression based off everything he's throwing and the decrease in velocity to his four-seam fastball down below 90 miles per hour. So they put up a ton of runs. and it looked like they're getting hot. But they really – there's an old saying, beat the teams you're supposed to beat. And those were 3 games that Boston Red Sox should have put runs up in, and they did. German Marquez is not any of those 3 pitchers. I think that's my biggest point, and that's why that doesn't stick out. That sticks out to me as something that is a little bit off. As far as Waka goes, look, Atlanta's struggling as a whole right now. Okay, I don't think that anybody is going to debate with that. They're absolutely underwhelming for the amount of talent that they have on that team. They had a really bad road trip, in my opinion, where they really underperformed in some opportunities. Take the Dodgers series off the board because they faced good pitching in that series. But in Arizona, they, in my opinion, they failed to deliver. They didn't put up big numbers in a hitter-friendly environment. And I think the Atlanta Braves, if you take a look back at just this season, in really good hitters' environments, they've struggled to put runs on the board. You can go back to the series at Cincinnati. The majority of that series was off of the main slate, so I don't know how many people paid attention to it. But Atlanta, their lineup has struggled right now. And you've got some young guys in that lineup. You've got Acuna leading off. You've got, Albies, 2 really young guys. You've got Dansby Swanson, another young guy. Camargo is in this lineup right now, young guy. Inciarte, young guy, not doing very well. Markakis, nobody in baseball over the last calendar year coming into the season had more batted ball events with an exit velocity of over 95 miles per hour. That guy, that's how hard he's hitting the baseball. And Freddie Freeman's not himself. So is this a spot where Atlanta could break out? Possibly, but is it also a spot to look at Michael Wacha against a lineup that possibly can be had because they're just struggling as a team? So, that's something that I think Atlanta against Michael Wacha and Boston against German Marquez are 2 things that need to be figured out through the course of the day.
Right, and that's kind of how this slate's coming down to. Is there's some good pitchers on this slate. I definitely think that there's some really, really good pitchers. So we obviously we talked about it. Houston, Texas are probably the top 2 spots we're really going to look at. Boston and Atlanta are in play. You just got to kind of, figure out how much exposure you want to those teams. And a couple more teams I'll just quickly go through, and we're going to kind of just touch on pitching and get out of here. You can look at Kansas City versus Mike Minor. Mike Minor gives up a 213. Mike Minor gives up a 0.000 WOBA, ISO to lefties and a 158 WOBA. Why I keep saying ISO to righties. And Kansas City as a team, they have a 143 team ISO. So even though Kansas City is projected to have one of the higher totals on the slate, I don't really know how much exposure that I really want to them. I mean, Mike Minor's a guy that you've been talking about all year long, and the numbers are really, really showing what he has been doing. But I definitely think you look at Kansas City, I think you can get a little bit of exposure there. And the other team I think you can look at too is you can look at Philadelphia going against Gio Gonzalez. Gio Gonzalez, just like Mike Minor, he has a 0.000 ISO to lefties, 167 ISO to righties. Philadelphia, for a team that was such a stacked lineup, they only have a 31% hard contact rate as a team. Just to kind of round it up off, Houston, Texas, we like them. Boston, Atlanta, Kansas City, Philadelphia, there's some really good spots that you can look at. But for cash, I'm really going to be looking at Houston and Texas, and that's really where I'm at with bats to kind of get the day started.
I'm going to tell you right now that the Philadelphia Phillies need a day off. Like, they need a day where it's a day off and they don't even go to the ballpark. That's what they need.
Clear their heads.
They do. They've got like Bryce Harper's in a scary spot at the rate he's striking out at. I understand the walks are there, so his on-base percentage looks okay. But I believe going into last night's game, he led the league in walks and he led the league in strikeouts. Nobody's scared to pitch to Bryce Harper right now. The guys behind him aren't exactly tearing the cover off the baseball, and guys aren't getting on base at a high enough clip in front of them. It's a very, very long lineup. That lineup on paper should give people fits. It should be a problem. We saw glimpses of it, but I like Gio Gonzalez in this spot, and I think Gio Gonzalez can navigate this is a veteran pitcher. It's a crafty guy. I think he can navigate through this. I loved Woodruff yesterday and had exposure to Woodruff yesterday. It was one of my favorite pitchers yesterday. So I loved Milwaukee the day before against Aaron Nola. Aaron Nola just the numbers, his ISO against left-handed bats was over 300. So, I think that the team that you need to be looking at today for cash consideration, along with Houston and maybe even in front of the Texas Rangers, is Tampa Bay. Jose Urena is absolutely terrible. He's a gas can. And you look Tampa Bay, Caleb Smith, absolutely unbelievable season this guy's having. The ISO numbers against him, from both sides of the plate were not great going into yesterday's matchup, and Tampa Bay still found a way to put pressure on that team. They got a solid outing from Charlie Morton, who probably under-delivered on what he should have put up from a strikeout standpoint based off the 091 ISO that Miami has as a team, and then their strikeout rate of 26% as a team. And his almost 11 Ks per nine, he probably should have put up more strikeouts. He didn't, so I'll say it's a solid performance from him. But they just grinded out runs against a really good pitcher in Caleb Smith, who's having a really good season. Urena is not even close to Caleb Smith. This guy's an absolute gas can who gets lit up pretty much every time he goes out. He's 1-5 this year. Tampa Bay, to me, is a team that I don't know what their implied run total is. I don't look at implied run totals until like the last thing I do to kind of see if I'm off my rocker or not for the day. But Tampa Bay, what is their implied run total?
I'm not sure. Let me look real quick for you.
I'd be really curious to see what their implied run total is.
So we have that game. I don't have theirs individually, but we have that game. 7.5 implied run total, which is tied for the lowest on the slate. And Tampa Bay is favored by it's a 110 favorite. So my guess is they probably have like a four run total, somewhere around there.
You cut out.
I said so. The game has a 7.5 over under.
So I'll circle back to that in just a second. Let me just cover from a pitching standpoint. There is no question. There is zero question about who the number one pitcher on the slate is. It's Justin Verlander. Period. Point blank. End of story. There's no discussing it. He's the cash game play. You should try to get as much exposure to him in your stacks for tournaments as possible. Detroit has a 26% K percent, only a 148 team ISO. Justin Verlander with a 10.67 Ks per nine. This guy, I understand there's some hard contact against him. I understand his ISO numbers versus lefties and righties is both over 200. A lot of that has to do with the fact that the guy still throws 96 miles per hour, and exit velocities can get up, especially because the ball's coming in at 96 miles per hour. However, this guy's going to strike out 10 today. That's my call. He's going to strike out 10, and then you need the quality start and you need the win, right? It's about strikeouts, getting the win. That's what we need. So Houston, the highest implied total on the board, I guess from what you're saying, they're going against Gregory Soto. If you don't know who Gregory Soto is, they brought him up from AA. He bypassed AAA last Saturday to start the second game of a doubleheader, and Minnesota lit him up. Their bullpen is in shambles. It's been overworked. It's been getting lit up ever since you can go back to a week ago when Anaheim put up 13 runs on them, and then they had to go into Minnesota, and they got waxed in that series and came home to Houston, where they've been getting waxed in this series. So this bullpen is in shambles. Fastly approaching the Washington Nationals level. A couple of guys that I think are very interesting on this slate from a pitching standpoint. I'm curious to see where Patrick Corbin falls based on the fact that Justin Verlander should garner so much ownership. German Marquez is extremely interesting to me as a contrarian player right now. And look, Mike Minor has gotten no love all year. And all he's done is been their number one. He's been their ace. He's pitched extremely well basically outside of his first start of the year against Chicago. So he's very intriguing to me as well. Ryan Stanek is a guy that we know has a ton of strikeout upside. If you're looking for a cheap SP2 on DK, I almost don't have a problem if you want to load Stanek up against Miami and their 091 team ISO and their 25% strikeout percentage. So if you want to look at a cheap SP2, Ryan Stanek, typically speaking, when Stanek opens, you can look for Ryan Yarbrough and the other guy's name is leaving my mind, but one of those two guys will come in and pitch. I actually used Tyler Beatty yesterday, and I think I had him in 10 lineups, and he got 22 fantasy points, and he was 0.7% owned. You needed a lot more yesterday from your pitcher, but my point to you is, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, you have to – FanDuel especially, and I'm not familiar with what DraftKings does. I don't pay attention to that over there, but FanDuel especially does not show people that aren't starting. So if it's not a start, like in their player pool, they're only going to show you by default Ryan Stanek. If you do your research, though, and you find out who's going to come in to follow him up, there's a little box in the bottom left that you uncheck that says display all pitchers, and then you're able to load up whoever you want at pitcher. It will show in your lineup in your upcoming on your upcoming screen that pitcher is not starting. But if you know he's not starting, you know Stanek is opening, you can get a guy like I got Beatty yesterday at 0.7% owned. And, you know, he almost had a really, really, really good day. He just couldn't get through a bases loaded situation. One point he struck out, I think, 5 in a row. So, you know, that's kind of where I'm at on pitching. Eduardo Rodriguez, it's an interesting matchup to me because I don't know. There are some lefties in this lineup that can get after him, and he's a little bit of a reverse splits guy. If I'm not mistaken, he has over a 300 ISO against him versus left-handed bats. He's actually dominated right-handers. And he's really interesting to me in this matchup. Colorado, I stacked him up yesterday, and I hedged against Chris Sale. I tried to get field. That's where I looked to get field leverage yesterday. Colorado still put up 5 runs and hit a couple of home runs, but it wasn't exactly what I thought it would be. But this is a team that for the last week and a half has absolutely mashed the baseball, and this is a team that's notorious for killing left-handed pitching. So Colorado and Rodriguez are something that I'll be looking more into as the day goes on.
Yeah, for sure. So, hey, that's kind of where we're at. Just broke down some pitchers we're liking, some teams that we're possibly going to be looking to stack in cash games in GPP. You know, as I said earlier, if you want a more in-depth analysis on today's slate, make sure to check out the site, dfscheatsheet.com. And, hey, man, good luck on the contest tonight, and peace out.